Hey, Tony.
Hey, amigos, how are you?
We're doing good.
All is good?
Yep. Well, yeah, actually, yeah, I feel better. But the power of Advil is real, though. I'll be honest with you. I can't doubt it. And it's nice that I don't take Advil ever. I've taken more Advil in the last week that I've taken in the last, I don't know, probably 10 years. So
Why, you got a cold?
no, I got my wisdom tooth removed last week, and I went to see my doctor because I
It's
was still in
still
pain.
sore?
Yeah, and he told me, James, you're not 19 anymore, and it looks like you won't heal like you were 19 anymore. So, last time I did wisdom teeth to somebody your age, it took him 3 weeks to get out of the pain. So I was like, what? 3 weeks to get out of the pain? Are you insane? But it seems real. So, I'm powering through.
Have you heard of Nurofen?
Of what?
Nurofen.
No, what is that?
It's something like Advil for colds and flus and aches and pains. It's absolutely fantastic.
Durofen. Let me Google that.
You just get it in the drugstore over the counter. It's really good.
Is it with a
They probably
D
have
or with
their
an N?
different name, but it's good.
Is it with a D or with an N?
Sorry?
Is it with a D or with an N? Is it like
N
they?
N Nurofin. I think that's the
Yeah,
shortest
yeah,
way of
yeah.
spelling it. Nurofen. Really
Cool.
good. Hello?
Hello. Oh, we can't
Oui.
hear you, Pepe. If you're trying to talk to us.
Hey,
Okay.
James,
Oui, la main.
the best thing is the mix of ibuprofen and the Advil. So you
Oh,
take one Advil, 1 hour later, you take one Tylenol. You
uh,
wait 6 hours.
okay, la
You
main.
understand? And
Well,
that
Are we
works.
gonna start sharing our drug cocktails?
Listen to
uh,
your mama. Listen to your mama.
Selena, I will try it. Yesterday, I was just taking Advil, and
Yeah.
yesterday I actually tried Advil and Tylenol because the doctor gave me
Yes.
the prescription of Advil, Tylenol, and codeine. I was getting all three at the same time, but I
Okay.
wasn't sleeping and I wasn't having erections. And so, two things that I didn't
Man.
appreciate. So I had to choose to
Get off
remove.
those meds
Had
fast,
you
man.
tried breathing?
Some things you have to give up a little bit, you know.
I figured I could breathe, but regardless, the codeine was very powerful. It did not make me sleep. As soon as I stopped the codeine, sleeping came back.
Yeah, but then what he says, Tony, is probably the mix of the two in one.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know.
well, it says it's just a different version of ibuprofen,
Ibuprofen.
which has less side effects than ibuprofen. That's what I'm reading from Nurofen. So it sounds like a good
Yeah.
idea to take an ibuprofen with less symptoms. Probably Advil, is not interested in marketing, a thing that is better than theirs, right? So Tony's doing a good job for me here, giving me a hand, telling me something that's a bit better than Advil with less side effects. So
That's
for sure,
good.
I'm gonna go try and find it. It's from New
But
Zealand. What the hell? New Zealand drugs.
what?
Nurofen was developed in New Zealand.
That's okay.
I just,
Good.
I think it's funny. Anyway, today we've got a hell of an episode, guys and girls. One hell of an episode. One that I am very hyped to talk about, which is funny that we talk about drugs because we are going to talk about essential bodily needs. Those
Yeah,
things that.
maybe drugs will come out. We're gonna be talking about that too.
Oh no, really? Oh my god. So for me, it's been the longest I've been sober from anything because, except Advil and Tylenol, because, the doctor said that it wouldn't promote my healing to use, alcohol or cannabis, so it's been now 10 days. I haven't smoked. I think it's the longest I haven't smoked in my adult life.
That's
So,
why you don't have erections. You need to smoke something, man.
Look at Rick; he looks so crisp.
oh
That's the
yeah.
first dimension I've seen him in.
Crisp, crisp, crisp. That's so good. So
It's
we
my
could,
first
we
time
could,
I can actually see you clearly. I'm in Port of Vallarta
with the
Nice.
proper connection.
Hey, Rick,
It's
how are
I'm
you?
not pixelated anymore. Tony,
How are you, my friend?
Puerto Vallarta on the way home.
Oh, good for you. Home to where? Canada or Zipolite?
No, left Zipolite home to Canada before the big
Oh,
lockdown.
Oh, before the big lockdown. Oh, because there's going to be
Yeah,
a big lockdown in Mexico?
it's going to be a big lockdown in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
really? Wow.
Yeah, it's true. They're not going to let any
Crazy.
international flights come in, locking
Mm.
everything up.
They're locking everything up. They're canceling all flights to American and to Caribbean and Mexico. They will fly back from Mexico for 2 weeks, and then that is it until the end of April.
So
Wow.
stay
Completely
till
shut
April,
down.
May. It'd be nice in Mexico for another few months.
Well, yes, but who's to think they might even fly in May when it comes back?
Hey, Justin.
Take it off.
That would be okay too. Pepe's got a nice house there. He give
Well,
you
I tell you here, I feels much secure living in Mazunte than being back in Montreal for me anyway.
Also, it's probably better for your health sitting in a certain sense because in Montreal you'd be stuck in a little apartment, not being able to see
I'd
anybody.
be
And
depressed.
the cold weather doesn't help a lot either.
No,
Yeah.
I'd be depressed. No,
Nah, you come
I'm
back
not
after the
flying back
lockdown's
to
over.
Canada.
You know, you're allowed to stay in Mexico. It's a good place for you to sit in, I think.
Yeah.
But we miss you. Simon's here, by the way. He's at my
Ah,
place.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's
Oh,
here.
cool.
We played board games last night. It was pretty fun. But
Good. That makes me happy.
yeah, that's really cool. All right, so it's nice to see everybody. Welcome for being here. Before we get started, because it's around the time we want to start. I'm
Yeah.
preparing you guys for Tuesday's episode because if you guys, I am making the best budgeting episode ever. I've taught budgeting to people for the last 10 years, and I updated my budgeted class for you guys. I'm even going to give you a template that you can fill in so that you can check your numbers, see if it makes sense. It's going to be an amazing experience if you want to budget. And I tailored it for all groups. So it should work for people that make no money but have money, and or people that have no money but are making money, and for people that have no money and that aren't making money. So it's going to be tailored for anybody of any type of group of financial logic. It's probably the worst for people that have money and are making money, but they don't need to budget these people that have money and that are making money. They're okay.
they have money.
Exactly, right? So they don't need to. So I made it for everybody that might not have money, except. So I hope you guys are gonna like it. But let's jump in today's class. Well, class. Let's jump into Pepe's conversation, which I'm very hyped for. Essential bodily needs.
Yeah, this is one of the subjects we have talked a lot when James and I were in Mazunte. That was one of our favorite topics while swimming in the ocean.
Oh yeah,
Because
absolutely.
especially when we were talking about the connection to the elements, how in a modern society we're lacking connection with the elements that form our experience. We very rarely have a connection with the fire element, or especially with clean air or with proper grounding and all that. So we'll be dissecting all these topics and find out what our physical body actually needs to be thriving and to be living properly.
Yeah, for me, that piece of advice you told me about connecting to the elements, this idea that I had to connect to water, connect to fire, connect to air, connect to the elements of this world. I remember it being like the most wizardy bull stuff ever you told me. I was like, how can that even make sense? How can that be important? And then I tailored my life around it. I now live with a fire stove. I live in the forest, connected to the air. I have silence. I'm closer to ether. So I'm really closer to the elements, and I have to admit the benefits of that are clear and visible to me. But you have to experience it. This is not something that you can just say. But in a certain sense, I totally agree now, 5 years after these conversations, that connecting to the elements is a clear essential need. but I don't
Yeah.
think it's well marketed. Let's say.
No, not take into account because well, the thing is that elements is a kind of word that is used for different things.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about elements, it can be talking about fire, air, earth, water, and space. But elements are it's also a word used for the chemical elements like oxygen, nitrogen, and all that.
Hmm.
So it's important. We're gonna make a little bit of that distinction too and start talking about it.
Very nice.
So we have a little bit of an outline with a presentation so we can
Absolutely.
follow
As
along.
always.
Maybe we won't be using all of it, but because this episode is going to be steering a little bit of information that we usually don't hear about or controversial information too.
I like that.
Because especially with diet and with what we eat or what we drink, there are so many people talking about it and so many different opinions and so many things that we should do it like this. No, you should eat so many calories. You should eat this much. It's such a big topic that has been fantasized and talked in so many different ways that maybe we'll bring a little bit of light
Yeah.
to
Well,
this subject.
I think that it's very interesting because we have very bad science on nutrition. We have very bad science on like food because we're passionate about numbers. We're all thinking, oh my God, wouldn't it be nice if we had a number to say how much of this and a number to say how much of that. But all these numbers, they're not so right. They're not all proof. And if you look at nutrition as a science, they have like margins that are very weird. Like they accept things, like if they do a study, they can reject up to 25% of the cases. So let's say they have 100 people and they all give them food, they can say to 25 people, oh no, even if you got sick, it's okay. Because the 75 other were happy, and it worked for them, then it's okay. And so nutrition for me is always a weird science. Every time I look at studies, I'm like, how did they remove 25% of the people from this study and call it science? It blows my mind.
Yeah. And for me, the most disturbing part of all these studies is that they are taking they're subsidized or they're made by the big food companies.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So they're just trying to prove that it's safe for them to add stuff to their different products and being able to actually market them and keep selling them.
Yeah, what corn syrup? High fructose corn syrup, right? That's great for you, right?
Well, so this is like the outline we're gonna be following a little bit. So
Right.
first of all, we talked about it on previous episodes. Light is very important for our system to actually function because without sunlight, we wouldn't be able to do any of the metabolic functions that our body does. And especially right now, we found out that without proper sunlight, we don't get a correct immune response or a correct immune defense. So being close to a place where you have sunlight, it's very, very healthy. So it has been very satanized. Sun has been put like a villain that we have to be protecting against it. Of course, there are times of the day where it's a little bit harder to actually stay in the sun.
Yeah.
But getting actual sunlight, we're receiving photons, and that's pure energy. Photon is one of the the core energy movers in our system. So light is one of them. We also talked last week about rest and silence. Without proper silence, our body cannot be able to properly rebuild or do all the reconstruction of our tissues. So we're not gonna talk about a lot about that one today. We already talked about it last week. Also on the breathing episode, we talk about the air and the oxygen balance. That's one of the things that's also super important. Liquids and water. That most of our body it's made out of liquid, and that's how everything moves inside our system.
Cool.
So very important. Then food, that is a delicate topic because food finally becomes like our little drug. That's we're addicted to certain substances or to certain flavors or to certain textures, and we abuse some of these substances without knowing what it's actually doing to our body. And in that same topic, we talk about complex molecules that drugs fall into this category as the same as caffeine or alcohol or chocolate, or even as you were talking about ibuprofen or all these different
Complex stuff. Yeah.
medical drugs that also interact with the biochemistry of our body. And then movement, that is the final episode we're going to have next week. That movement is what actually makes all this water, food, and different things that are inside us are actually interacting.
Absolutely.
And as we stated at the beginning, the connection with the elements, that is what keeps the balance in all our system.
Keeps the balance. I like that. I have a lot of questions throughout this, so I'm looking forward to moving forward in the conversation, Pepe.
Yeah. So in the next slide, we have used this slide previously. That it's hard to actually imagine the body being a fixed thing or like a solid thing. It's something that it's continuously and constantly changing. We don't have a single atom that just stays there and just stays there till the end of our life. We're constantly changing one thing for the other. It's like having different pieces that just constantly move.
Yep.
So having this thought in the back of our head through this presentation is going to be actually very handy and very usable, that we're constantly exchanging, putting things in and out. Things come in, things go out. So that's interesting. If we go to the next.
Absolutely.
And we also saw a similar one where we saw the composition of the human body. And in this composition, we see that the most abundant element in our body is first in order of abundance is oxygen, then carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and we go from there on to all the different elements. And these different elements then combine and form different molecules and different substances. So talking about this, if we go to the next, we're talking from the beginning that we're going to talk about air, liquids, food, water, but everything that comes in contact with our system first has to be analyzed.
Okay.
What kind of substance is it? Is it safe? Is it usable? Is it toxic? Once we identify, well, we don't do it consciously. Once the body identifies if it's usable, safe, it has to be processed. Maybe it has to be combined with other molecules or things, be transformed, then transported to the part of the body or to the system that is going to be used. So it can be used for metabolic functions or combine it to create other substances. Then we can either store it, isolate it, or secrete it if it's a toxic substance.
Interesting.
For instance, if it's a toxic substance and it's overwhelming the system, what it does, it isolates it. The best place to isolate a toxic substance is inside a fat cell.
Oh.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat that. Sometimes if we're getting too much toxic substances and our body cannot excrete them all at once, the best place to hide it, it's inside a fat cell. Because it's going to isolate it, it's going to cover it, and it will prevent it from creating toxicity around the body.
And it will be able to thrive. Probably the fat will be a source of energy for it.
Yeah, and afterwards, when the body has enough time to process it, then it opens that fat cell, and then it can detoxify it again.
Wow.
Sometimes fat cells serve as a defense mechanism to avoid over toxicity of the body. So in later times, when it has the proper energy or the proper way to get rid of it, it does. So also toxicity is it's mostly that the amount of toxic element that we're getting in. Sometimes we can process a little bit, but if we're taking too much of it, then it gets problematic.
Interesting.
So
this is interesting to me because
we're going to be using this little stair system that everything that comes into a body, analyze, is it safe, then we process it, then we transform it, then we transport, then we either store it, use it, or secrete it, take it out.
And this is not something we do consciously. This is something that our body does naturally. Or you're saying, right? This is my body just goes through this process naturally, because if it chooses that it's toxic, it will probably just either make me vomit, or it's going to go out faster, or something like that. Or it might
Exactly.
store it. It might store it.
It might. Yeah, when it's an overwhelming amount. Imagine we're gonna see it
I
later in a
understand.
slide, but if we translate it to trash, you're at your place and you're just having too much trash, you start storing it in bags, and you put it in bags until you find a place to actually that the trash collector comes in and you take it out. So the same happens with the body. Sometimes we just put it
We
in
have too much of it.
different spots so we can deal with it later.
Exactly. Well, this is super interesting to me anyway, because I didn't think of it as such a linear process, you know. But when you think about it, if we've all lived our lives here, and I often like to think that we've learned, one of the things that now we have the internet and we have all of it, but before, like 1,000 years ago, how did you know what was safe to eat? Well, you knew because the
Yeah.
guy in the village ate that mushroom and he died, so you don't eat mushrooms no more. So before you had to wait for people to die to learn. And so I'm guessing that this is an interesting way to see it, but it is true. I've what do you mean by isolated though? Like, I get all of them, but I'm not too sure I understand what the isolation of it means.
Well, that the example I gave with a toxic substance, you have if it's creating problems there, a toxic substance, you just identify it, then surround it, isolate it, so it's not creating that problem. Putting it in a fat cell, for instance,
Yes.
putting it in a place for later excretion, for later secretion. So
Interesting.
it's isolating it from other things. That's what happens usually with cancer cells. They get isolated in certain
Wow.
ganglia or in different pockets, so it's not running all around until the immune system comes in and gets rid of it somehow.
Wow.
So
Wow.
isolating a toxic substance or a virus or a bacteria, it's important part of the system.
And this is everything entering the body, not necessarily like sunlight hitting our face or connecting to fire. You're talking about something being ingested or air being in our nose.
Yeah, so it can be anything that you're putting into your skin, anything that you're breathing in, anything that you're eating, anything that you're drinking, anything, any substance that comes in contact with your body.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Do we go to the next one?
So, yeah. So finally, it all comes to like the Lego pieces, because we have all these different elements like oxygen and carbon and things, and the body starts selecting all these little pieces and putting them together to build different structures and different things.
Wow.
That each different organ uses a different amount of each of them and a different combination. And that's the magical part of the body that is doing all this combination of things without actually we even thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is true that it is amazing. When you think about it, isn't it insane that we all eat different things all over the world and we all survive, Like, and we have vastly different diets. And, some people, I think it's mind blowing. And you're saying that it's our body that's taking the molecules from each different thing and making the molecules we need from it. That's very powerful function
Yeah.
of our body.
Yeah. So there's the interesting thing is for us being conscious enough to bringing it good pieces of Lego of the Lego so we can build good stuff. Otherwise, we're just getting weird pieces that we cannot use, and we have to be excreting, and we have to be overusing our energy to take them out of the body.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Okay, so if we go to the next two, that's just the different elements that we have at our disposal in all the chemical elements, the table of elements that are in our environment, and some of them are toxic for us. Some of them we combine them in different proportions to create hormones or to create substances or enzymes. So it's all these Lego pieces that we're building, all this amazing body that gets everything in place.
Yeah,
So
I
the next
find
one,
this I find this unbelievable. You know, the table of elements. If you think about it, you know, I asked. I have two friends that are geologists, and so you know they know a lot about elements, being geologists. And I asked them, "Is this the full list, or is there more that we will discover?" And they told me no. This is the full list. Well, we might discover some new ones as we travel to places, but it blew my mind that of our human understanding of the world, we can define everything that's around us through all of these different little things. That's a bit mind blowing.
Yeah, yeah, the physical, the
James,
isotopes
can you
and all
interrupt?
that.
1 second, yeah.
Yeah.
James, I can't get in. I'm not getting any visuals, no slides. What have I done wrong?
You just are you looking at like do you see me and Pepe, Rick? You want the slides? I can send them to you if you want them. Here, let me send you a link.
Yes.
Let me give me a sec, Rick. I'm gonna get that organized for you.
Occasional.
All right. Wrong email again.
Okay.
And then I go here. I hit share. Copy link. So in the chat of this I put the link to the slides if you're interested, Rick. If you want to see them at the same time as we're talking, it's inside of the chat.
That would be great. It was came on.
You just click the link and you'll be able to
Came-
have access.
Then it disappeared.
Yeah, and we're on slide number 6
The
at the
link
moment.
came on the screen and then it disappeared.
If you want, generally you can pin us. It's also going to be good for your internet connection if you choose to do that. So like if you click on our faces, there's like a little pin that shows up. You click on it, it should make it a bit better for the presentation.
Okay. So in
No
this,
pin.
You don't see a pin?
Carry on, I listen.
All right. And
No pin.
if you check the chat, you'll see the conversation. So the presentation, so you'll be able to hear and see. Just click that link.
Yes, beautiful, James. I finally got you all on the full picture.
Nice.
all right. So in this one, we're just seeing how that table of elements, those are single elements that are jumping there, but they get
You're lucky.
together.
No, 1 sec.
But
Sometimes, you know, like when I do this, I feel like if we're on a Ouija board, you know, like I hear you, yes. From the over. You guys know what I'm talking about? That Ouija board, you know, to talk to dead.
Yeah.
I hear you. Do you hear us? And by the way, if you don't understand what I'm talking when I'm talking about pins, you see like here, if you take your mouse and you go on it, you click the pin, and then we become the main, you know, and then it goes infinite like this. I'm gonna remove it before your brain breaks. My brain broke, but you know, that's how you do it.
all right.
I hope Rick figures it out. Let us know, Rick. All right, let's go.
So in this image, we're just seeing that what we talk about this combination, that building of Lego structures, that element gets together with different elements and create a compound, just like like the water molecule or other molecules, and that's what's going inside the body onto a level of complexity that it's really quite hard to understand. Creating, getting all this nourishment from food, and from there creating testosterone, or creating the thyroid hormone, or creating all these things. So that's why the importance of bringing good raw material to do all this building.
Aha. So, I understand what you're saying. So you're saying that our body will do the work of constructing what we need, but we have to give it a variety that's valuable enough for it to be able to produce all these things. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And when we're lacking these raw materials, that's when we don't have enough building stuff to do the proper substances to maintain the health of the body.
Wow, that's Pippy, that's the best explanation I've ever heard of why we have to eat different things. I've never. It's amazing.
And when you start eating just one foodstuff, that you're starting to lack other substances to create
Wow.
enzymes, or the pancreatic acid or the hydrochloric acids of the stomach. So it's finding all those little things around nature. So the first one, as we saw on the best first episode, it's breath and it's air. So we go to the next, and it's a concept, or the next one too. We saw this picture also on the last presentation, and I thought of this concept. I want to know what you think about it. Elder blocks.
Elder blocks, like the blocks that have been in our body for elder
And not
generations.
only in our body, but that has been like the foundation of
Somebody was
microorganisms
saying.
and other animals. So it's like the water and the oxygen and the other things. So it's like the basic ones, the ones that are the basic for everything, and that's the ones that we have to take most care of, making sure we have enough of them, enough
Uh,
clean water, enough clean air, because from then on, that's the ones that are dependent of most of the metabolic functions of the body.
and it's also most of our body, from what I understand, right? From this slide here. Oops, not
Yeah.
this one here. Since our body is made out of mainly oxygen and water, I can understand why these blocks are the most important ones to our survival in a certain sense.
So yeah, we go in that order. That first, air, making sure that oxygen is it's clean. Because when we're breathing, imagine if you're living in a polluted city or in a polluted place, you're just not getting oxygen in. You're getting all these molecules that your body has to once again say, is this usable or unusable? Is this toxic or safe?
Oh my god.
So once we decide that, then it has to activate all these different mechanisms to get rid of it if it's toxic.
Yep.
Otherwise, it will start accumulating in the different parts. It will accumulate in your lungs if you smoke, or if
Yeah.
you just start making your body work harder in order to get rid of all these things.
Man, Pepe, I'm a bit mad. Probably you already told me this. Probably you already did, but you know, if you didn't, I'm a bit mad that you didn't tell me earlier because I'm completely mind blown from these little things you just told me. So you know, maybe I should stop thinking about it for a second, move forward.
What's the question?
No, I don't have a question. It's just because you know, I've been actually thinking about this for a long time. I was wondering, you know, why a good variety of food and a variety of like, you know, different things to eat had such positive benefits on my health. You know, like if I tried everything. You know, when I was really poor, I lived on peanut butter sandwiches for like 2 years, you know, or a year and a half. I know you do that tostada with honey. You know, you taught me that, which is a little bit of an improvement. You have to buy honey, which is expensive, but at the same time, it does give it a bit of a taste to it. But I was feeling not that great, you know, eating that one thing. So then I moved to eating a variety of things, and I felt best when I would eat a very large variety of things. You know, not just two or three things. Literally going to eat all that I could in a certain sense.
Yeah, I think that has given the human species an advantage, because it's one of the few species that can eat everything. You can eat protein or plants or this or that, and if you compare to other animals, they're just limited to to specific kind of foods. But us being able to use different food stuff has made us create different substances for survival.
Yeah, yeah, it is a huge advantage. I have to admit, you know, it's better than my theory on why humans are best, right? You know, my theory is because we can throw stuff. We're the only real people that can throw things. It's such an
Yeah,
advantage.
movement is also very important. But chemically, inside, we're going to be seeing a little bit later in the presentation. We're going to see that too. So we go to the next.
Yep.
So what did you think about the naming all this the elder blocks?
I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense, and it's also respectful of our elders. So 2 wins.
So here are also molecules of substances that are pretty common, that are also like all those Lego pieces that building blocks. So we jump from the air that that's
Tony's
important.
asking a question. Tony's asking a question, and I also want to welcome Hector to the conversation. Thank you for coming, Hector. And Tony's asking us, what about fluoride and chlorine in the water? Do you have any take on that?
Uh, it has to do especially with the quantity, how much of it. Because chlorine, it's used in certain metabolic functions, but not all of them. It's in higher amounts. It's a toxic element. So if we see it in the slide, the first on the composition, we see that chlorine is also part of the elements that we have in our body, but it's
Oh yeah,
finding
it is
that
there.
balance, not too much of it. How much? What percentage is it?
0.2 chlorine. Yeah.
So if it's only 0.2 of your body mass, imagine how much you can actually ingest. It's not like you can be chlorinating all your water and drinking it a lot, because when it gets higher than that percentage, you have to take it out. You cannot have 1% of chlorine in your body or 2% of chlorine in the body. It has to maintain that balance.
0.2. So if your water has literally 0.2% of chlorine in it, it's not that bad.
It's not that bad, but yeah, it's finding that percentage.
What's happening in this one, Pepe? But thank you, Tony, for the question. It's interesting what you said.
This one just shows the different elements that are also these building blocks, like these elder blocks. That those are the little Lego pieces that you're going to join with different substances, like nitrogen, to create amino acids or proteins or different things. So from the air, we jump again to the water. That it's going to be the important one, because water really is what's making your body function. It helps regulate all the body temperature. Mostly, it helps regulate it. It helps metabolize all the food. It aids the digestion. It lubricates the joints. It surrounds all the brain and organs to act as a shock absorber, as protection. And it's the one that helps also to flush and remove all the toxic wastes. So that's why it's really important to make sure how clean are your bodily fluids. What kind of water are you putting in? What it's like having a clean river or a river filled with waste or with other things. So if I ask you the question, how clean are your body fluids? How would you answer?
Well, me, I live, in the woods, and I have my own well. That's and it's a very clean well water that I have. And I gotta admit that I feel better drinking my well water here than I feel drinking city water that has gone through all these weird rusted tubes. That.
Because an interesting question here is, most people, the water or the liquids they ingest is not just pure water. It's coffee, tea, wine, beer, and you don't see any other animal in nature ingesting a liquid that it's not water.
Yeah. But they also
So
drink weird water, though, these animals. Like my dog, you know what he does? He digs a hole and it makes water, and he licks the water from that hole. I doubt that dirty hole water is necessarily the ideal situation also.
So when we were looking at the elder blocks, the H2O molecule, it's one of the basic ones. It's used for everything. But when we start mixing it with other substances, if we go to the next slide, what kind of liquids am I drinking? Because it's not the pure water. So we're mixing it either with coffee or with alcohol or
soda.
Or with soda or with sugar or with different things, and that just makes that water again asking that question: is this safe? Is this toxic? Can I use it? Do I have to excrete it? Can I use this? So it's just giving all that extra work for water that is just a transporter of all these substances in the body. So a good exercise is to make a list of all the liquids you drink, and that's how you'll see how clean the water, the liquids you're taking are, how pure are they.
This is a good list. I drink everything on this list, but I have to admit that I don't take a lot of them. You know, I drink wine, but very little. I do drink a lot of coffee. I think coffee and water for me on this list are number one here. I've abandoned soda a long time ago. Beer, I'm not that big of a fan. You know me, Pepe. Have you seen me drink beer many times? I think I've never seen you drink a beer, Pepe, though. But, like, these are not things that we appreciate that much. But hot
Hmm.
chocolate sometimes. But this is an interesting list. Do you think some are better than others?
Of course, especially all the carbonated drinks. A beer, if it's not an industrial beer, it's also a good. It has nutrition in it.
Yeah. And it has a.
Some good wine also that's the same. But the thing is that we have shifted from a pure water perspective that it's what every animal in the planet drinks exclusively water. We don't need extra weird things. It's just a social thing and
Yeah.
a flavor thing.
It's the
But
stuff of life.
if we're talking health wise, it's we actually don't need any other forms of liquids rather than the food, than water, than pure
Yeah.
water.
Yeah,
Because
which
yeah,
makes us sad, when you think that a lot of places in the world don't have access to clean water, but they can buy a Coca Cola.
yeah, that's their source of water.
Yeah.
So we started with air, we followed with water, and starting to really pay attention to which source of liquids are the one that are making everything go around the body. Which one are we using? Because there are some people that actually just they don't use water at all. It's just either milk or fruit juices or something. Because then we get to the part when we talk about the pH of the different liquids that we're drinking, because
Which which will
that
probably answer
changes.
Christina's question.
uh,
Christina's asking about what about coffee, and I'm guessing you're actually going there, talking about pH. Coffee has a big pH position, right?
Yeah, because once we get the liquid inside our body, the blood has its own pH. If we change it a little bit, the body has to neutralize it with different substances. So, especially coffee, coffee is acidic. Here we see it, it's on five, kind of on five on the pH scale. When we see that water is usually in 7, that's the pH of the blood mostly. But when we start ingesting beverages or liquids that are more acidic, our body has to bring it up. Otherwise, it will create an acid effect in the body. So, where do we take all these substances to neutralize
Yep.
this acidic pH? The body goes to the bones or goes to the teeth
Oh
to get
God!
some calcium or phosphorus. So we add that to that liquid, so it brings it higher in the pH scale.
Wow! And everything's on the acidic scale. A good
Yeah.
question. What's examples of alkaline from water we can drink? Because that's the only thing on the other side that could counterbalance this acidic world, right?
Well, that's why that's it. It's water. It's the way to go. There's very little other things that are in the liquid side that are alkaline. That's when we combine it with food, because also there are many foods that are very alkaline and help us balance this equation of pH in the body. But mostly is seeing that again when ingesting certain beverages, the body has to go through this process. Is this good? Is this bad? What do we have to do? So you make it have extra work to balance it and bring it to the safe side to keep the pH level. Because if we go to the next slide, we see the pH of the different bodily fluids. Because
Oh,
if we see the body has different fluids and all of them have different pHs. And
interesting.
depending on where it is, it has to be more acidic or more alkaline. The simpler example is the acid secreted by your stomach. It has to be very acid in order to transform the food.
Man, that's so. Wow, gastric juices are really low on the pH scale.
With that,
Pancreatic juices,
and here's what that we see that we actually need a variety of all these things because we have liquids inside our body with different density, with different viscosity, with different contents, and with different pH. Your blood must stay all the time between 7.35 and
very
7.46.
precise, very precise.
If it jumps from that if from that level, if it starts getting too acidic, it will just start creating holes in your veins. It would be like having acid running through your veins. So that's why that level has to be maintained in that place. But the stomach is designed to have all that acidic environment to actually decompose the food. If we don't bring this acid to the stomach, the food will not be able to transform. So that's why we need that acidity in the body. And the same
And
with
it
all the
balances, I
different.
guess. Right? It's the reason why we can have so much acidic food is because our gastric juices are so alkaline that like I love it. Interesting. I didn't know any of this.
So also the same, if we see the cerebrospinal fluid or our brain on our spine is surrounded by a liquid, and it also has a very specific pH in order for it to be able to transmit all the electrical signals in the nervous system. So every time with water we are messing with the pH, the whole body has to adjust all these juices.
Wow.
So it's finding that spot where we're not just bringing all these spikes of acidic pH, then it goes down. It's just so like starting a machine and expelling extra energy.
I find it
So that
yeah. I find it interesting also what you're saying, the fact that it's like you need air, you need water. I think everybody here can understand why you need air and water, right? It's just that you're putting an importance on the quality of which water you receive, and you're also putting an importance on the quantity that you're receiving. But then the next thing on the adventure list is pH, is making sure that what you're ingesting is not too acidic in a certain sense. But this is to me it is very interesting, this idea that you have to think about the pH of your body and how you control it.
yeah, because in the end, if we go to the constituent of all this, the pH is decided by which substances or which elements are in the solution. Because if you have too much carbon, or if you have I don't know, phosphorus or all this, it either makes it more acidic or more alkaline. And these substances are used. The stomach needs certain foodstuff that it can combine to create an acidic effect.
Yeah,
But it's finding that balance. But in our current diet, we're jumping too much to the acidic side.
I believe it. I have actually that problem. And actually, I sometimes have the opposite problem. Anyway, let's not talk too much about my gastric problems.
We'll talk about it later. So let's jump to the food, because otherwise we're gonna stay a lot in the pH and the water. So after seeing air, after seeing water, and previously seeing the light and all that, we go to the dense stuff, the food stuff that it's like earth, like soil. There it's physical elements. So in this one, we go to the next.
In this picture, I'm sad for all these spices and this cheese that the fish is so close to it. It's ruining all the cheese here. It's a regrettable picture of fish here, by the way.
Okay. In food, mostly we focus on the macro molecules or macronutrients. That are the ones that are mostly used by our digestive system, and are used for building blocks of our body. There are the carbohydrates that, if we see it there, it's just mostly oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon molecules. That's it. The same with fats. It has the exact same Lego pieces. both carbohydrates and fats only have oxygen, carbons, and hydrogens. The difference is that fats have a longer chain that can be folded or transformed into more energy. And the last one is the protein, that the proteins add nitrogen in its formula.
So
And we have,
you were talking about elder blocks, and you can see them in here. Really, can you? Right? Like,
yeah, especially in all the macromolecules, because in food, that's nutrition science has mostly concentrated in three these structures, without taking into account that there are other micronutrients that are as important as this, that are calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, manganese, and all these elements that are not part of these macromolecules.
wow.
But and this is when they started talking about calories and how many carbohydrates and how many fats should you eat, and more proteins and no proteins, and vegan diet or carbohydrate or
Well, so that's why
carb.
carbon. So carbon is a big part of understanding calories and understanding all this, because it's all oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon, and N.
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen, which is also part of our body, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the next one.
Wow, interesting. Okay, this one we saw already.
So in that one, we see again that what you're gonna eat also has to be analyzed. Is it safe? Is it usable? Is it toxic? So then we need to process it. That the stomach secretes the acid to see how we can transform it to use it. Then it has to be transported to the parts of the body that is needed to combine it or use it for different things. If we're eating too much of one thing, then we store it. That's what happened with fats and carbohydrates. We start eating too much sugar, we're not going to use it because we're not exerting effort, or we're not exercising, or we're not moving. So the body just stores it for later use. That's a survival mechanism that we haven't used it well lately. But when we start using too much, can we go to the next one? We can see when we're using too much, or we're using substances that the body cannot recognize. If we're using additives or colorants or synthetic sweeteners, the body starts just putting it all around, and that's what we said in the beginning. It starts storing it inside fat cells.
Yep.
So imagine the fat cell being a trash bag. And inside of it, everything that you don't know how to classify or where to put it, or it's too much to actually excrete, you just start accumulating in the body.
Yeah, and you know, I want to add something on this. I've been doing a lot of studies on because I've got a lot of kids in elementary school that are having, you know, like ADHD and, you know, like problems like that, and I've been studying it a lot. And I discovered, did you know that you were talking about food colorants, you know, food coloring? Did you know that those if you they had kids with ADHD, and a lot of them, they asked them to stop eating food colorants, you know, and like more than half of the kids stopped having their ADHD symptoms just because they stopped eating food coloring. So think about the effect on your brain, exactly what you're saying. And maybe the ones that didn't get affected were the fat kids, you know, that had all their food coloring stuck in their fat. But I don't know the study, I didn't read it, but it blew my mind that food coloring, something that we are told is so banal, does nothing, had such a huge effect on our kids. And those are the ones eating all the juices and the candies and all that, you know. So I don't know, it's an interesting thing to me.
Yeah, because if you see the colorings, if we go back to the elder blocks, the colorings are molecules that are like a monster. They're different arrangements that the body doesn't know what to do with them. It's what's this thing? How do I burn it? How do I use it? How do I put it in an organ so it doesn't know? So in this one, we also see that the excess of sugar that we're having in our diet.
Yeah.
And that's when we start storing all these things. So if we were first paying attention what drinks are we having, with food it's the exact same thing. Realizing how much of these extra substances that have no use or are imbalancing everything we're actually getting into.
I believe it.
Uh, in the next, it's an interesting one that tells us of all these substances that are actually like Frankenstein of foods. We should really stay away from them because the body doesn't know what to do with them, so it either stores them in fat cells or it starts creating problems for us to get rid of them. That is the high fructose corn syrup. That it's another form of sugar, but chemical sugar and industrialized and processed kind of sugar that it creates metabolic syndrome and diabetes and a lot of problems. The same with trans fat, that it's all these oils that you use to fry stuff. Anything that is fried, also it's very problematic for the body to get rid of and to process.
Yeah.
Artificial flavors, the same thing when you were talking about, the same with artificial colors.
Yeah, it's
All
funny
this
that right here it says it. Right in your little document, it actually says artificial colors, and it talks about ADHD. I actually talked about this before I actually read this slide, so like double like validity there. Interesting.
double confirmation.
Yeah.
The same artificial sweeteners and preservatives are really, really dangerous. We really hardly understand about them because when you add them to food, it just makes them to stay there forever. So it's a substance that when it goes in, it's like having it there.
Man, it's
We
like
cannot
literally everything processed, right? Everything that is processed in our society falls under one of these categories somewhere, right? Like,
exactly.
so that's why you have to eat the potato as it comes directly, right? You don't fry it and transform it and
So in order to see a little bit of this, we can see the molecule structures of all these artificial sweeteners, and if we compare it to the elder molecules and how they
far they are.
start being more complex, or
No-
the next one too.
Now I understand way better why you want to call them elder molecules, because if you look at the molecules of thing, then you see how different. Look at how different these things are just for colors. Wow.
Those
Insane.
artificial sweeteners. Yeah, the one of colors, you see it too. That you're putting that molecule inside you, and your body says, what's this? What do I do with this stuff? I have to take it out, but then
It might be
just
stored.
it's a lot of confusion and toxicity in most of the things.
Exactly, Tony. I know in many European countries, Europe has a very different take on ADHD and ADD. You know, it's a very different take than how we do it in North America. And, it might be a fad here or something like that. But, also, let's be honest, here we eat more things with colorants in it. Did you know that, whatchamacallit, Kraft Dinner, macaroni and cheese?
Yeah.
In Europe, they had to put the label on the label that this could affect your brain and affect your focus. And so they stopped pulling the colorant inside the macaroni and cheese in Europe because the European industry forced them to put a label that said it. But in America, it's still all done with coloring. All the food is preservatives and coloring and things like that. So I think it would explain these high amounts of lack of focus and hyperactivity in a certain sense. But yeah.
Yeah, because not enough research has been done to what does this color do if it's ingested in these quantities in the body. How will it respond? So
For sure.
and here we were talking mostly about processed food, but if we go then later into pesticides and stuff that is used to natural food, we also create another problem because there are substances that our body immediately said this is toxic. I cannot deal with it.
Wow.
It's pesticide and it will kill stuff in my body.
Wow.
So these are foods that if you're going to buy them, make sure they are organic. Otherwise, don't eat them at all. Because if you imagine, for instance, the dirty dozen that they call them, peaches, since they have a very soft skin, if you don't put these pesticides, insects will come and eat it, or other things. The same with strawberries or
A-
cherries, and
apples and
also,
nectarines. So a lot of these I actually eat a lot of, and I don't eat the organic version. Wow.
and the lowest in pesticides, for instance, the avocado, all that hard skin it has, you don't need that much protection from the outside. So
And onions
so
either,
they
and
don't
corn
use they
either,
don't use it that much.
and pineapple either, and mango. I understand what you're saying because these have harder skin. Wow. And I gotta tell you, it's very hard to grow these things. We tried to grow strawberries and peaches at home, not very easy. Maybe the
Yeah,
Canadian weather not great for it. We've got 2 apple trees now, so looking forward to try and have apples. But we're growing our garden, so hopefully we won't have to do that. But it's a very interesting list. And potatoes is here in the dirty dozen. Holy moly!
where we start talking about more complex molecules that are not usually on food. Here we can see caffeine, we can see
Crystal
THC,
meth,
we can see
THC.
LSD, and how their constituents are just the same one. It's carbons and hydrogens, but they're just different combinations. And here we see with these substances, and we prove that every molecule that goes into the body changes our thoughts, or how we're feeling. The same with colorants or additives or something. They change the way we our consciousness works.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So
This is this is mind blowing. You know what? Like, I'll wow. I'm having. This is a lot to process, Pepe. What you're telling us here, because the problem is, I think the media, the news, the people around us try to tell us that everything you're saying is ultimately not true. They because they don't want us to know or something, but it makes a lot of sense. It's not complicated. Our body's made of elder blocks. We take food. They try to make blocks from the food we make. But if we take blocks that are so different, then our body can't handle it, and it affects our mood. It affects how we live. It affects our health. So this is a very new way for me to see life today. So I'm gonna take weeks probably to think about this. I'm already still thinking of the rest and relaxation episode. Now I'm stuck thinking about this. Pepe, I'm gonna think about this for 2 years. I'm stuck. Oh
well,
my god.
you'll start figuring it out.
Well, I hope so.
But here we see as caffeine, for example, depending on the quantity that we drink, it affects the body and it starts changing the pH and all that. Alcohol, the same thing, or sugar, the same thing. They're just seeing them as molecules that change the way we behave and the way our chemistry interacts inside us.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So if we go to next week, this one just shows how even the structure of DNA is just built by the elder blocks.
Yeah.
It's mostly nitrogen, oxygen, and that's it. That's how
Wow.
we're taking these little pieces to keep building cells and keep building the DNA inside our cells. Just nitrogen and oxygen being combined and building that staircase of the
That's why we
DNA.
can. That's why we can live so long without them, right? Because we can't live long without air. Like what? 2 minutes without air, and you can
Yeah,
live what 2 days without water. But without all the rest, we can live weeks and years. And
yeah, because inside the body we still have all that, and the body can just rearrange and decompose and join other stuff together to create all these substances that are needed for substance. But
yeah,
eventually, in the long term, if we don't have enough of this, we start uh, deteriorating somehow.
maybe I'm jumping the gun. I've seen that there's not a lot of slides left, and I want to say that if there's one thing I learned from today and these conversations is that water, breathing, light, and resting are key to my well-being, and adding anything else to the mix might change it for the worst in a certain sense.
Or for the best, because there are also certain molecules that can help you recover for something. So making sure when to use all these molecules and use them wisely, because that's
Interesting.
what the intelligence of man has brought us to that place where we can create certain molecule that would aid us in a certain time to recover from something or to gain extra insight of something, or
Wow.
starting to use them properly. Because in the last slides that we're going to talk about, it's another thing that will keep you thinking for a little bit.
Oof.
Oof. Because
Oof.
what we just talked about, it's about all these substances and how they affect our physical structure and our organs and our bones and all that. But then we see that our body is made up of a kind of 10 trillion cells, mostly all of them. But inside of ourselves, we're like a small planet that is filled with microorganisms and bacteria and different kind of little things that are living inside of us.
Yeah, things we
So
don't.
we
Th-
have
things
inside
we
of
don't.
us more microbes than actual cells.
Wow.
So all the things that we're eating, all the things that we're drinking, all the things that we're breathing is actually making all these microorganisms reproduce and live inside ourselves, because these microorganisms are the ones that also help us digest food and transform all these things. The the proteins that come in or the fiber that come in, they also make them transform some of them so we can use them in different organs.
Wow.
So we're sharing this experience with different bacteria inside our body, and when this balance of bacteria is also uh, altered, that's when we start having certain diseases too. So maintaining a healthy microbiome, it's very important for all of this to function. So
Wow.
the yeah.
Yeah, so this explains naturally why things like nicotine affects, lung cancer, things like that, right? Because too much of that is affecting our
And that's why
microbiome.
antibiotics also creates havoc in the body, because it starts killing all the little animals that we have in the body. If we translate to the earth, to the planet, that's when we start having less diversity of animals. We start having just certain amount of bacteria on certain types of them. So when you go out and eat something and you have a bacteria that just comes into a planet that is completely void of other life, it just starts reproducing and creating problems or an infection. But if we have a healthy microbiome that it has different species of bacteria and stuff, it just maintains its balance properly.
Unbelievable.
So in the next one, we see that we have bacteria in the nose that helps us with mucus production and antimicrobial chemicals. The mouth has also different bacteria that helps it with digestion and keeps pathogens out. The lungs also has its own bacteria that helps lubricate all the tissues. The stomach has its bacteria that help prevent the gastric acid and complications. So we have bacteria and little living things that are not considered our body. They're external aliens that help and are symbiotes with our system.
Wow. So they're connected. You mean symbiote meaning that they're part of it. They're interconnected with our body. This makes for a way more holistic approach to bodily reality, right? Like thinking that there is all this is way more. We have to think way big. We have to take our body as a bigger picture. You know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So we finish with this the acknowledging that we also have little microorganisms that are elder beings than us. They have been in the planet for so much longer than we have. These bacteria, these microorganisms are actually that's what maintaining life inside our body.
That's super interesting. And they made us, right? Not only were they there before us, but they crafted us, right? Evolution, these bacteria have made who we are now way more than TV or internet or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, they precede us by millions of years. So we finish up with the last one, and it's finding that balance between earth, water, fire, air, and the elements. It's finding that place in the middle to maintain all this
These
inner working, and it's something that goes up and down, and you ingest something and then you bring it out, and it's finding that it's like surfing, it's like waves.
It is like waves, and when you think about it, this also explains why connecting to earth, to water, to fire, to air makes sense, because we connect with all these microbiomes, we connect with all these things that are affecting us ultimately. Wow, Pepe, what an episode! Essential bodily needs. I have a better understanding now, really, of how things that I ingest and that I breathe and that I put on my skin can affect my well-being, and it makes me rethink a lot of what I'm doing, actually, and I think that's good. I think that's good that I'm rethinking it. Because of you, I have a lot less back pain. Because of you, I have no wrist pain. Because of you, I have a lot of way more healthy life. But now you're giving me more tips, I think, that are going to make me have an even healthier life. So I thank you for that, Pepe, because without you, I'm sure I would be not as healthy as I am right now, and I'd be much more unhappy with my life. So I thank you for this, and I thank you for this episode once again, for helping me, move forward with my well-being. This is the best thing you've ever done for me. I appreciate it
And as
enormously.
you said, it's a lot of information and a lot to process. As we said in the beginning, it's way more complicated than counting calories and saying, yeah, you should go on a diet and do this. It's understanding it from a different viewpoint and understanding it from the basic level. Once we get from there, we can see that it's easier to find a way to actually drink, eat, and see when to do it and when not to do it. Because another thing is that most people then say, "Oh, so then can I should never drink alcohol again? Should I never drink coffee again?" It's not that. It's just finding that thing, that understanding that when you drink it, what's happening when I'm drinking it? How much will I drink? It's not like you should cut everything out, but because the body can deal with any toxic thing, even if you drank poison, if it's not that much, your body will manage and see how it will overcompensate that excess of a toxic substance. That's evolution, finding how to deal with all these external stressors that we're putting in willingly through our mouth or to our
Ah, man.
breathing.
You were preparing me for this talk conversation, Pepe. For all a long time, you were preparing me for this conversation. I remember clearly one time we were at the beach. We were swimming, because this is how me and Pepe really would like this to be like an experience where it wasn't on Zoom. Ideally, me and Pepe, we talked about it. I think the best way to do this would be everybody would be in the sea, and we would do this conversation with these pads in the sea. We'd be like, look at this stuff, guys, and we'd all be swimming, connecting to water. I think that would be the ideal scenario for this class. But one of those conversations, you told me, I said, oh, it's bad to ingest that for my body. And you said, well, James, if I put poison in water, if I put a little drop of poison in a huge bottle of water, are you going to die from it? And I was like, no. And so you had asked me this question, and it stayed in my mind for a while. But I think now I understand what you're saying. Your body can handle a little bit of everything. It's when you give
Yeah.
it too much of something that it's become dangerous. It's an abuse, right? It's in the abuse of something.
Yeah, when we see that slide where we have how much of oxygen, how much of this, how much of that, is fine. It's maintaining that little balance. Maybe you go off board a little bit, but then you come back, and it's navigating through all the offers that life has for us, and it's not overusing it. Sometimes it's just using common sense to really understand how to
Yeah,
ingest stuff
yeah.
and get rid of it.
I love it, Pepe. It makes me feel like if I should probably do what my mom said. The beginning of this conversation, she said, James, don't take two Advils. Take take an Advil and a Tylenol. And, it's less abuse. I'll take two different ones. My body will be able to handle it better. I love it. It's full circle, this conversation. Full circle. Everybody, thank you for coming. If you've got any questions, Pepe's right here, ready to go. I'm sure he can answer any question you would have. But personally, this was, as always, as always, I always love these conversations with Pepe. You know, I'm so happy we're doing this. And I want to remind everybody that Tuesday is going to be a really cool episode. Probably the most interesting tech one if you're interested in understanding money better. It's not going to be. Did you know that that a lot of people were trying to figure out how to budget and they had no clue? They tried to figure out how you could live with 20K a year and they had no idea. They figured it was impossible. I read an article in The Economist saying that you can't live without $34,000 a year, and I was like, that's insane. How do you need that much money to survive? You know, certainly when you just need water, light, rest, and relaxation. But jokes aside, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody Tuesday. And like I said, if you have any questions, it's a good time. If not, thank you for coming. You guys are the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you.
It's our pleasure, you know.
Pepe, I have a question back to water again. The chloride and the fluoride, they add both things to the city water. And we have no control. And I've read different reports. It's causing all kinds of diseases with children and everything else, development delays and everything else. What do you think? Number one, what do you think? And number two, I use a water filter jug. I buy the filters in supermarket to filter the water. What do you think of that?
I first answered the first question. The second one I didn't get it. You'll repeat it afterward. As we said, the chlorine, if you use it once, twice, it's no problem. But if every day you're drinking chlorinated water, the body starts accumulating it and it starts creating a toxic effect. So adding it,
it's the only choice we have. I mean, you turn on the tap, it's there. It's put in by the city, by the system. People have no control. Most people don't even know. They're assuming it's regular water. All this water, they add the two chemicals to it.
Because I think what they thought, or the question was, because chlorine, what it does, it kills most bacteria. So they measured what's better for my population, to bring them completely, water completely void of bacteria with a little bit of toxicity, or I let them have bacteria that they can get diarrheal infection or something.
Okay.
And Tony, if I can, I know a bit about chlorine. It's an interesting topic, chlorine. I did my research on it, and you can maybe check out what I'm saying because I'm not an expert in any of these fields. But if you take a pool and you put chlorine in it, you always have to put more chlorine in it. Why? Because chlorine will evaporate before the water does. Okay, so if you're scared about the chlorine, so if you're scared about the chlorine in the water, and you'd like to have non-chlorined water, the best solution is to take your water and let it sit for a day or 2 or 6, 8 hours, and the chlorine will evaporate before the water does. And so I think that's why the city is not fearful of chlorine, because science has proven to us that chlorine evaporates before the water when it comes to evaporation.
Okay.
So
how about the fluoride?
Fluoride, I've read a lot of scary things about, so I don't want to say anything about it. I personally, I don't know what is real and what is I don't know. But in Pepe just bugged. He's going on another planet, so I don't know where he is. But I can't say for fluoride. I heard it's good for our teeth, and there's stories about it. But at the same time, how much is it in water? Yeah. I know it doesn't evaporate out. How does it affect our mental health? But there's more than that in water in cities, right? Than fluoride and chlorine. When you check the water from the city, sometimes there's weird there's shit, literally shit in it, right? Like if you take the water from your house and you go test it, a lot of city water has shit in it, like organic waste, and I'm not saying shit like anything. I'm talking about like excrements, and so it's a weird that it's in the water in the cities and it's there and like that's why the city doesn't test your water every year, because if they had to, they'd have to change all the pipes, and they don't want to do that stuff, and so that's another reason why they put chlorine in the water, because it helps the pipes not have shit in them, which is pretty important. So I don't hate the fact that there's chlorine in water, but for the fluoride and the piping system, I think that's a bit scarier to me in the city water concepts. But once again, I'm not an expert on any of this, so
How about the filter? The filters work?
You have to filter the shit out. Yes, it does actually. from what I
Oh,
understand.
good. Okay.
Can you hear me there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't know, it's kind of the connection, something happened. Yeah, the fluoride is a different topic, but it's way more toxic than chloride. And usually, toothpaste, it's something that most toothpaste has a lot of fluoride in it, because sometime in the 50s it was proven that it helped with tooth stuff, but it doesn't compensate to the damage that it does to the rest of the body.
Mm.
So yes, it's trying to steer away from it. And if you have your own source of water, not the one from the city, that would be a lot better. Or either, as James said, to either
Let your water sit. I think that's what he was gonna say. But
Okay. All
so
right, guys.
so
Great
your filter
episode.
your filter is doing two things, Tony. Ultimately, right? Because it's filtering out the bad molecules that are in the water from the city, and
Hopefully.
it's letting it sit so that the chlorine gets out of it. So if you're asking me if the Brita legitimately makes your water better to drink or whatever,
Yeah.
it is actually true. And there's a lot of filtering methods that exist to make your water better. From my reading on filtering water, I think the UV one is the most healthy one. If you have access to a UV filter, it's the ideal. It's just light that burns the water as molecules in it, and it comes out without any of the organic waste that the water could have accumulated.
All right. Okay, guys. See
Hey,
you
Tony.
Wednesday, Tuesday midnights for me. Midnight. If I'm awake again, I fell asleep last Tuesday. Sorry, I missed it. Okay, over now. Stay well.
We miss you, Tony. You're the best. See you later.
All the best, guys. Thanks a million.
Always. Pepe, what a good time to freeze. The episode's over and your internet doesn't work no more. But Christina, I gotta say, your internet is mint all the time. It works well. What great news. Mom, are you still there?
Yes, 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 yes.
How's your internet? Did you get everything? Did we cut out every
Everything
once
is
in a
fine. Yeah, here I get everything. I didn't.
Unbelievable.
It doesn't budge or anything. No, because it's the what you call it. It's the
Fiber.
the optical. Yeah.
Yeah, fiber. Fiber's the life. That's so great,
Mm-hmm.
Mom. I'm happy. I'm happy that it's like that. It means that I will be able to go work in Mexico. What great news! Oh, Pepe reconnected.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll let you girls go. Thanks for coming.
James.
Okay. Hey, so get in touch with me, you and Simon. Call me back.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, we'll call you, Mom. See you later. See you, Christina.
Goodbye.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Oh, Pepe. My God, was that amazing? Holy shit. Oh, I gotta stop the recording.